Welcome to another marvelous episode of CFB Nation. I'm your boy Moon Vibes, and today we have a special treat for you. We are going to be talking about our breakdown and my trip to beautiful downtown Atlanta to check out Georgia Tech and spring ball action. I'm going to be recapping my experience at Georgia Tech, talking about some standout players, and also letting you know about the culture that I experienced on good old Bobby Dye Way. All of that's coming up right now for you. But before we get into it, make sure you follow CFB Nation, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I didn't really have any expectations about what was going to meet me when I touched down in downtown Atlanta. Upon arrival at Bobby Dye Way, it's just a mystique in the air, and there's a certain feel that's there. There's a certain excitement. There was people out there, people grilling outside, tailgating was in full swing, as if a game was about to happen in about an hour. Let's talk about some of the prospects that were in attendance for this spring game between Team Swarm and Team Reclam, and Georgia Tech did a great job of hosting them. I'll talk about the popping name first. Caleb Cunningham out of the class of 2025. He's out of Choctaw County, Mississippi, and he's a five-star prospect, 6'3", 180. And this kid is a multi-sport athlete. He plays basketball, and he completes in track and the long jump and the triple jump. He actually qualified for the Mississippi 2A state qualifier as a freshman in the long jump and triple jump. And as a two-way player in 2022, he saw 28 passes for 323 yards on offense. And he took his team to the third round of the Mississippi 2A state playoffs. As a freshman, he posted a stat line of 31 catches, 569 yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns as a freshman. Jamison Riggs, he is an offensive tackle out of Hiram County, and he was joined by his teammate, actually, Walter Matthews. Let's talk about Jamison for a second. Jamison has college offers from Arkansas, Auburn, Cincinnati, Clemson, Colorado, just to name a few. Tennessee also offered him, and Georgia Tech was the first to offer him. This was back in December of 2022 is when they offered Jamison Riggs. He was there. Walter Matthews, his teammate, was getting interest from Florida, Arkansas, Auburn, Boston College, and also Cincinnati. A four-star prospect who is a tight end, 6'7", 245 out of Hiram. Graham Knowles is a prospect that didn't have any ranking when I went to go look into the deepest research, but he did have an offer from Georgia Tech that came in April 8th, 2023, and he has offer from Colorado State as well. He was in attendance. He's a quarterback, 6'7", 220. You heard those measurables right, ladies and gentlemen. It's a lot to be excited about if you're a Georgia Tech fan. And last but not least, the player that I wanted to highlight was Pedro Reyes. He has offers from North Carolina. We also had Maryland, Vanderbilt, Cincinnati, Akron Zips were schools that were interested in him. And he's 6 foot, 185. He's an athlete out of Columbia, South Carolina, in the class of 2025 out of Cardinal Newman School. Those are some of the prospects that were in attendance that Georgia Tech was hosting. This coaching staff is fairly new and revamped, so a lot of people might not know some of the faces that is on the coaching staff, but it's led by the head guy in charge, Mr. Brent Key. From 2005 to 2015, being a tight ends coach, recruiting coordinator, special teams coordinator, offensive line, assistant head coach, offensive coordinator, offensive line, recruiting director, even as early as 2014. He's also a Georgia Tech alma mater. I mean, he has 17 championships as a coach and a player, 9 divisions, 7 conferences, and 1 national champion. So if you want a winner, look no further than Mr. Brent Key. He was an interim head coach in 2022. And now he is entering in his first season as the head guy in charge. His coaching staff is very interesting. Offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner. Didn't get a chance to meet him, but looking at his record, he has 18 years of experience on 3 different college football coaching staff. And in his first season as offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech, there's a lot of people that's going to be looking at this offense like, are they going to put up points? The short answer, ladies and gents, is yes, he will. He spent previous 10 seasons as an offensive coordinator at Southern Miss in 2019, Arkansas State from 2016 to 2018, Middle Tennessee from 2011 to 2015, and Murray State as well in 2010. So he's been on multiple stops on his journey, and it leads him all the way down to the beautiful state of Georgia. I got the chance to meet Andrew Thacker on the coaching staff, and he's in his 5th season. But in his first 4 seasons with the Yellow Jackets, his defense has produced 12 All-Atlantic Coast Conference selections. The list can go on and on talking about the accolades for Coach Thacker, but what you really need to know, he came from Temple, where he served for 2 seasons, including one as a defensive coordinator. In his long season as Temple's defensive coordinator, the Owls scored 8 defensive touchdowns, number 1 in the nation. And even though this game was an offensive explosion, and you see it with the points, it's not necessarily his fault. They wanted to showcase all of that offensive fireworks today. You know what spring games are meant for. Coming up on the coaching staff that also needs to be mentioned, I'm talking about Mr. Kevin Sherrer. He has 13 championships. He's an Alabama alumni. He is in an interesting situation because I think he's going to be working with Coach Thacker as well. He's a veteran high school, college, and NFL coach. He has experience on all 3 levels. And in his first season at Georgia Tech's linebacker coach and co-defensive coordinator, he's going to be working hand in hand with Coach Thacker too. Another guy that I'd have to mention and talk about real quick is Chris Winkie, who's going to be working with Buster Faulkner to get this passing game going amazing. You remember Chris Winkie, Heisman Trophy winner and 7-year National Football League veteran Chris Winkie. Yep, that one. He's in his 2nd year as Georgia Tech's quarterbacks coach and his 5th year as Yellow Jackets co-offensive coordinator. So he and Coach Faulkner would be working hand in hand. Also, going to mention Norvell McKenzie. He is a Vanderbilt alumni. He's in his 1st year at Georgia Tech. And he's also an Atlanta area native. He's coached running backs in the NCAA Division I for 12 different years, man. And he's in his 1st season as a running backs coach and run game coordinator at Georgia Tech. Oh, my God, Marco Coleman. Marco Coleman is also Georgia Tech's Athletics Hall of Famer. So you are very familiar with the Yellow Jackets with him. And he's a 2-time first-team All-American. He returns to Georgia Tech in 2023 as a defensive line coach. You also got Travaris Tillman, who's coaching the DBs, and he's in his 2nd year at Georgia Tech. Him to be in his 2nd year at Georgia Tech, working with these DBs to have that type of consistency coming in on the back end is something that I do not want to take for granted, and you shouldn't take for granted either. G Blade is going to have a lot to say about how this offensive line looks. As you can see, Malik Rutherford is getting busy, and that's the reason why he is him. And the offensive coaching staff had to love his explosion right there. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing at Georgia Tech this year. Explosion on defense, explosion on offense, and what a time to be a Yellow Jacket. Let's talk about the spring game in itself. Let's talk about standout players that you come into the game maybe not knowing about, but you have no choice to leave the game, and they're constantly in your mind, they're in your thoughts, and they're on the tip of your tongue. The first player that you need to know coming out of Georgia Tech spring game is wide receiver Malik Rutherford. He is wearing number 8 this season for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, a number change. But this kid is special. I'm telling you now. He's somebody that you need to pay attention to. He's a name that rang bells all throughout spring practices, and he was like the talk of the town. And there was a lot of hype coming around Malik, especially from last season and how he ended last year. We saw him come into the spring game and show explosion 2 times, 2 highlight film touchdowns, 2 times that he got busy being a yards after catch monster. When I say monster, I put emphasis on MONSTER. He is him. He reverse field, took a flat catch, reverse field, and then stretched out for the pylon. The other one, he caught a simple hitch route and broke multiple defenders and skated his way to the end zone in a beautiful fashion where he showed off his top end speed. Wide receiver Malik Rutherford, he showed on Saturday that he's him. He has 7 receptions for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that is enough to get anybody's attention. However, it was the way he did it. It was with flair. It was with finesse. It was his effort that showing that dog in him that you can break tackles, you can juke people. You're not going to go down, and you're going to take it to the house anytime that you're going to touch the rock. Buster Faulkner, offensive coordinator for Georgia Tech, has to be absolutely in love with this kid as far as explosion. He's number 1 that you need to pay attention to coming out of this spring game. Number 2, Haynes King, quarterback. Talked about him earlier, but it was the much anticipated grand reveal of the shiny new toy and weapon for the Georgia Tech offense. And he's coming and making his grand debut at Bobby Dodd And listen, he came to play. He alternated between Team Swarm and Team Reckham, and he orchestrated Buster Faulkner's offense to perfection. There were noteworthy throws, big plays. He extended plays, showed off his wheels, his ability to navigate outside of the pocket. I do not think that that's something that he just hangs his hat on all the time. I feel like this is something that he's really skilled at, like what he's actually really good at. It was the throws from the pocket that were absolutely breathtaking. It was his command of the offense. It was the fact that no matter whether he was on Team Swarm or Team Reckham, he seemed to have control of the offense. I left impressed by the way that Haynes King played. When the pocket crumbled, he knew how to play off script. He knows how to do it. He orchestrated Buster Faulkner's offense how he would ideally want it to be. In fact, I feel like all of the quarterbacks that played in the spring game did just that. Haynes can dice you up in the pocket as well. And on this play in the touchdown, he threw an absolute rope to the outside and the tight end dropped it. I think that this offense is going to be very hard to stop and prepare for because of their RPO/option emphasis. It's weird not being able to see Georgia Tech in like a option-based offense and seeing them airing the ball out. But under this new coaching staff, I think that it's a lot of hope and optimism looking forward into the future. I think it's going to be Haynes King's job to lose. I can't talk about Haynes King without talking about Zach Pyron. He's the quarterback that got some reps and definitely left me with my mouth dropped a couple of different times. Zach Pyron, if you thought the day was going to end without any quarterback controversy whatsoever, you were completely off. I also feel like Haynes King is just that guy that they need right now. Like, they need him now. But if there was something ever to happen to Haynes King, you are in perfect hands with Zach Pyron because he spun the ball today, man. He maintained his composure. Quarterback Zach Pyron, number 5, came in and he led the offense pretty efficiently. And he had some him throws today too. Zach Pyron is the guy that's going to be backing up Haynes King because I think that Haynes King will win the starting job. His ability to use his legs and extend plays is exactly what I feel like Coach Faulkner is looking for in his offense because it adds a dual threat element, and the drop off that you're going to get if there was something to happen to Haynes King to Zach Pyron is not going to be like a cliff. Pyron has some him throws today. Pyron is way more athletic than I thought and I gave him credit to. I think that he stands out in this offense because he was so efficient. He was 11 for 16 for a 153 and a touchdown. And the touchdown was a 55-yard rope to the right side to DJ Moore. That was absolutely poetry in motion. DJ Moore, wide receiver, redshirt freshman with the coaches giving him praise last season, made me think to myself, is he the real deal? If today showed us anything, it showed me DJ Moore is versatile as a player. He was involved on special teams. He tallied his second highest yardage for total wide receivers in this game. And I think that was a great way to start 2023 on defense. Some of the key players that stood out to me was Amari Harvey, DB. I didn't have Harvey on my radar heading into this game, but I can't leave without mentioning him because he was all over the field, whether it was pass breakups, solid technique and coverage, being disciplined against an offense that was just in full attack mode. For him to end the game with 6 tackles and a forced fumble that came a little bit earlier in the game, he stood out to me. Antinosa Rubin, defensive lineman. He's a veteran presence for the Yellow Jackets, and he will be relied on tremendously this year for them on the interior on that D-line. And I know that they still have question marks for their linebacker room. However, as we get closer to fully solidifying what this defense is going to look like, you're going to be counting on Antinosa Rubin, defensive lineman, to be the anchor for this team because the defense is very vanilla today. So for him to be doing that without any schemed pressures or anything like that, that showed me a lot of hope for Mr. Antinosa. He's another player that stood out to me. Kenyatta Watson, corner for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Very trying for Kenyatta at the beginning of the game because of how up-tempo, how down the field that Georgia Tech's offense was Georgia Tech wants to stretch the field. That's going to put a lot of pressure on corners. And Kenyatta, he's my number one corner for Georgia Tech heading into this season. He was also solid on special teams. He had some key plays later in the game. A play where he showed fantastic defense and he swatted down a pass that could have been a touchdown. Kenyatta Watson, cornerback, was another player that I need to talk about as far as standout guys. It took all the way into the fourth quarter to see it, but it was well worth the wait for the people that stayed around and checked out the freshmen and the young players that came in. I'm talking about the freshman D tackles, Bryson Dixon, Mike Jones, and Horace Lockett. All of them got playing time, and they did not leave me disappointed. And I would say, leaving the game, I said Georgia Tech's D-line, core of it, those three guys, Dixon, Jones, and Lockett, they're going to be the future of the Georgia Tech defensive line moving forward. Some honorable mentions. Avery Boyd scored 2 touchdowns in this game. He ended up getting hurt on a catch that could have been a touchdown. However, he fell awkwardly, and he had to end up leaving the game. The tight end room, I think the tight end room is very underrated for the Yellow Jackets. They have a good mix of young talent, old talent between Billy Ward and Ben. When they leave, you got Jackson Long and Stone Browner that's still there for you. I hope that this coaching staff rotates the tight ends like they did in the game throughout the season so that all of them can get reps. My favorite tight end that I saw was Jackson Long. I just love the aggressiveness that he played with. I love his physicality and how I can just sense and tell that he's just a dynamic athlete out in space and he has no problem in shying away from contact. Jackson Long struck Lamar on the sideline. Evan Dickens, the way he navigated tiny spaces in the spring game throughout the offensive line, that was impressive. You can see the clear vision, the patience, the decision-making, all of that came to life, even in a limited time with his yardage being like minimal. The box score, if you look at just the box score alone, you won't be able to like fully understand the weight and totality of his performance for Evan Dickens. Trey Cooley, a running back, he impressed me as well. I like the fact that he had showed great contact balance. He's an all-purpose type of back. He had 100 yards all-purpose in this game, 7.2 yards per carry. One of the most underrated things about being at Georgia Tech was experiencing their stadium up close and personal. Their stadium is very underrated. The city of Atlanta and the skyline of Atlanta, you can see it no matter where you are in the stadium. That alone in itself was breathtaking. The atmosphere, like I said, was already electric outside. So getting inside, everybody was just cool. The security guards were amazing. The fans that I ran into and talked to, they were all about supporting their school. I got out of my Uber and I was met with instant electricity because it was 4 hours before kickoff and fans are already out there in waves with their navy and also with their gold on. And it was breathtaking. You smell the good smell of barbecue. You see downtown Atlanta streets and the traffic and everything. It just feels like home. I realized that these fans really do love and support their team, even though they might not be a program that gets a lot of buzz. You see how I did that? They are of all sorts and varieties. There's young kids, college students, the older generation, fans that look like me, fans that don't look like me, of all sorts of flavors. That was a beautiful thing to see and experience at Georgia Tech. As long as you have on your gold and your navy, that's all that matters. Being here in this atmosphere was electric. On our CFB Nation spring game tour, Georgia Tech was an amazing experience all around the board, and I truly won't forget it. I know that they're building something special. I feel it in the air. I saw it on the field. And to be honest, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, this got to be the most hope that you probably felt coming into a season since, I don't know, when Paul Johnson was last year. There's brighter days moving forward for Georgia Tech. For me, Moon Vibes and CFB Nation, you know what we like to say. Make sure you hit that noti, subscribe for more. Peace, love, one.